Hello and good evening, everyone. This is Bhava Samvad on behalf of Kalinga Lit Festival. I'm welcoming you all to another session for the evening with authors Namit Arora and Abdullah Khan. The session highlights about Namit's book, Indians, A Brief History of a Civilization. As it says, the book is a snapshot of India's vibrant long history. Namit has also penned books like The Lottery of Words, a collection of essays, and the novel Love and Loathing in Silicon Valley. I would like to request our dignitaries, our guests for the evening to kindly carry forward with the session. Thank you so much.
Hi, welcome to Kalinga Literature Festival. I thank the organizer to inviting us for this very interesting session. With me is Namit Arora, technocrat, engineer, writer, activist, and so many things. He has done so many things in life, and his recent achievement is a wonderful book, which cannot be categorized in a one jacket. It is a history book. It is a travelogue. In short, is a very interesting take on the question of our Indian civilization. So Namit had also written a fiction book, which was published by Speaking Tiger. So in this session, we will mostly focus on his recent book. So let's welcome Namit and thanks for joining us for this session. So my first question and very basic question is about you. Tell us something about yourself, your family background, and as I know you are from Gwalior, how a Gwalior boy reached the shores of the United States of America, and what were the reasons for your return to your homeland? So enlighten us.
Okay, great, Abdullah. It's good to see you. And thanks for suggesting we have this conversation. It's good to be here. So yeah, I grew up in Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh. My father was a textile engineer who worked for Gwalior Rayon, famous back then for the Gwalior suiting and shirting brand. You might remember it, and perhaps even their print video ad with Tiger Patodi and Sharmila Tagore, still on YouTube. Gwalior Rayon was owned by the Birlas, and my parents and two sisters lived in the company town called Birla Nagar. My mother, despite her two master's degrees in sociology and political science, did not pursue a career outside and took care of us at home. I was raised in neighborhoods that mostly had professional, middle class, and upper caste Indians. And the values of this social group herded me towards the safe engineering profession from early on, and which was fine with me in my teens. It's not like I wanted to pursue anything else. And I did well in school and ended up in IIT Kharagpur, from where it was an easy and established path to the US for further studies. In fact, most of my batchmates went to the US also. And I later found a job in Silicon Valley, California. Why did I move back to India? I returned in 2013 after more than 2 decades for several reasons. I was bored stiff with my work, which I found to be intellectually and spiritually desolate, though the paycheck was nice and I sometimes missed the paycheck. Both my partner and I wanted to pursue full-time writing and other pet projects. And India was one place we could do so based on our savings. And to both of us, India was also a profoundly interesting country that was undergoing complex social changes. And I wanted to be there to experience it from within. And finally, I also wanted to be close to my parents in their later years without uprooting them from their social habitat. So there were a cluster of reasons for returning.
So when did the idea to write a book came to your mind? When you decided that you are going to write a book? Was it from very early age, or it was something which came up later part of your life? Were you interested in writing from college time, school time? It must be a
No,
very
actually, No, actually, I was not. The idea came much later when I was in the United States. In school and college at IIT, I could not have imagined I would write a book one day. And the way things unfolded is, I went to the United States. I was working there, and from almost the start, I saw my career as a day job that basically paid the bills. And in a way, this freed me up to pursue other interests which I cultivated in parallel. Reading, writing, travel, photography. I learned Spanish and so on. And like, this job was lucky that it funded my wanderlust and evening education in the humanities. So I was, before I started writing, I was doing all these things. I was just kind of immersing myself in life, and I took unpaid leave to backpack through dozens of countries. I worked in Europe for 2 years. I read voraciously. Had other lots of fun, had affairs, got into trouble, and generally soaked in the world. And I avoided settling down, as they say in Indian parlance. And I'm very thankful for that, looking back. In these early years, I had my share of rejections in the public world when I started writing. So it was not smooth at all. And I know you also have interesting stories there as well. But I kept writing, and I lived and learned and built a nest egg. And in due course, I quit the job, returned to India, and kept at it until fortunately things worked out. And the funny thing is that it was my unloved tech career that financed my new life of full-time reading and writing, travel, and the occasional volunteer project with, like the drafting of the solar energy policy for Delhi. Not to mention the, taking on the labor of love, this book, Indians. That's also something I started much later.
So you started with a non-fiction book, then fiction, and now you have written a book which can be said that is a book on history. However, there are elements of travelogue also. So from where the seed of idea came, and what led you to write Indians, a brief history of a civilization?
Yeah, I've been reading history for about 30 years. Curiously, history did not interest me in school. It was so badly taught, and kids were always judged by the performance in science and maths. So it was hard to take history seriously. Nobody appreciated you for it. My interest in history really began after leaving India, when life in the US raised for me various questions of culture and identity. In my mid 20s, while backpacking through Mexico, this was back in the early 90s, I was blown away by the ruins of the Mayan and Aztec civilizations, and that got me hooked on lost cities, by which I mean historical sites that were entirely lost to living memory and had to be dug out by archaeologists. And I've since visited scores of lost cities around the world. And then, in the mid 2000s, 2004 to 6, my partner and I took a break from work to travel in India for 2 years. And that was an awesome experience. We visited over 100 sites in 20 states, including all of the lost cities I write about in this book. And then, as I traveled and read about these places, they raised new questions for me, whose answers I could not easily find. For instance, I wondered, when I went to Dholavira, I wondered what was daily life like in the city of Dholavira, and what of the Harappan ethos is still with us today. What urban milieu produced a brilliant thinker like Nagarjuna? What was a day in the life of a student at at Nalanda University. What religious worldview promoted such erotica on Khajuraho's temple walls, which scandalizes us today? And why did it disappear? Our modern temples don't have it at all. How did the city of Vijayanagar become so rich? Can scoundrels also gain moksha after death in Varanasi? So these were all kinds of questions bubbling up. And so I started digging for answers, from which emerged the idea for a book like Indians, a book that would provide, engaging portraits of many of our lost cities, in which the traveler, me, would be part of the narrative. And as I connected the dots, the scope of the project evolved. I pitched the idea to Penguin, and as they say, the rest is history.
Thank you. Very interesting response. So my next question is about the format of your book. It has a very interesting format. It is a travelogue. It is a history, and we can say a bit of memoir also. So how you decided this format?
Yeah, I mean, it just came naturally to me. I was interested in both history and travel, and the idea of combining the two, narrative history with archaeological travel writing, just made sense. I wrote and published several essays in this format, which I think is quite rare in India, I think. I remember one of my early such essays was on Ugarit, an ancient site in Syria that's considered the birthplace of the alphabet, from which later alphabets are derived. This format just seemed very natural to me, and India has so much to offer for this type of storytelling. So that's how it happened.
Okay, so the dust jacket of your latest book says that Indian civilization is an idea, a reality, an enigma. This is a very interesting statement. So can you explain it for our audience and for me? What do you mean by this words?
Yeah. Indian civilization is an idea, a reality, an enigma. I think the statement tries to capture the very diverse and mutating quality of Indian civilization. It's the reality part is, of course, trivially true, going by any academic definition of civilization. And its form and content has never been stagnant. In fact, Indian civilization has been a journey of profound and continuous change, from the Harappans who built the first cities with indoor toilets and the most egalitarian civilization of the ancient world, to the dramatic reshaping of the subcontinent's culture by the Aryan migrants who brought new languages, religious ideas, and the Varna system. Then on to the rise and fall of Buddhism and Tantrism, to the advent of feudalism and bhakti, to the Turco-Persians bringing Islam and the rise of a new syncretic culture, to eventually India's momentous encounter with European imperialism and Western modernity. So, it's not surprising that Indian civilization has been different things to different people. And countless social realities have always coexisted here. Consider the social worlds of Brahmins and outcasts, or urbanites and Adivasis, or priests and Charvakas, or sultans and peasants, or Tamils and Mizo. Like, did these folks ever take pride in a common idea of Indian civilization? And is there a good reason to privilege one of these over the other? I don't think so. Can it not contain many such ideas? And so Indian civilization is also an enigma in that It has produced various, often conflicting appraisals of its central features and properties. In a way, comes to mind is to adapt Walt Whitman. Indian civilization is large; it contains multitudes, and so it's all of these at once: idea, reality, enigma. And by the way, this my editor came up with this, and I really loved it. And I give full credit to my editor at Penguin.
Great, great. So my next question is from is arising from this question only. So when it comes to the idea of India, so there are different segments of population, different set of people who look at the Indian identity in a different way. And India as a country was not a particular limited to a particular geographical area during last 2000 years. So what do you think? What do you mean by Indians? Because at a time, part of Afghanistan was also India. What today we have the Pakistan, Bangladesh, they were India. They were also part of the India. And if you go down south, you say the Chola and other empires which grew out of this land of Tamil Kam or Tamil kingdom. So they had they had ruled part of Sri Lanka also. So in today's context, how you define Indianness? How you define Indian identity?
Yeah, I think what is an Indian, right? As I see it, I think anyone who thinks of herself or himself an Indian is Indian. That's it. There should be no further qualifications, litmus tests, right? If someone thinks they are Indian, they are. And Indianness or Indian identity, which is larger than the citizenship of the modern state, ought to be expansive enough to accommodate everyone who considers themselves Indian in whatever ways they see fit, wherever they live. So they don't even have to live in the subcontinent. So I guess the point is, like, there will be multiple criteria beneath that, but as long as someone says they are Indian, they are Indian, and no one person or group gets to limit what it means to be Indian, at least not without a fight. As that there was the words of Rahat Indori's memorable phrase come to mind. He said, "Kisi ke baap ka Hindustan thodi hai." So anyone who thinks they are Indian is Indian, period.
Great. Very pertinent and very good answer. So, Namit, I will take a bit detours and talk about something about the linguistic identity of India. So, you must have come across a different kind of scripts and languages while going through these ancient sites. So there used to be the Aramaic and Brahmi lipi. Some of them were written from the right side. So what do you see the today linguistic identity India is having? How do you look at this linguistic heritage in context of the ancient literature or ancient language which evolved out of different cultural groups? For example, Tamil is one of the ancient, and many claim that it is the oldest living language. So many say Sanskrit, but many scholars say Tamil is the, because Sangam literature is very, very old. So what is your take on this issue?
Yeah, there's a recent book by Peggy Mohan which looks at the linguistic history of India, or rather, she looks at how languages have changed and what that says about the social changes happening. Social changes generate linguistic changes, and so on. So like, it has been such a fluid thing from once the Aryans brought the Indo-European languages inside and how they evolved into into various Prakrits and various and different regions had added their own prior linguistic substrates into it and created new forms. And so it's a very piecemeal, diverse map of languages. And linguistic identities are, of course, they have been there for several hundred years and was the basis for the division of India into its various states. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's the linguistic, there is fantastic deep history in various regions and its own literatures and so on, and they all need to be nurtured, together.
Okay, now we will come to the process of writing. Tell us more about your research process, your visits to the different sites, and since you are not trained historian, so did you seek any help from any historian or any archaeologist, or it was just everything was done by you? Because basically you are an engineer. So,
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm basically an engineer. I'm many things. I am. In fact, I was an engineer. I'm no longer an
trained
engineer
engineer.
for.
I said trained
Yeah,
engineer.
trained engineer. True. So yeah, I'm not. I didn't have formal training as a historian. That is for sure. And no, I did not approach any historian or archaeologist for help with my material. I think a lot of great stuff is already out there, and I mainly just read it closely, especially academic histories, archaeology, travelers' accounts, and I also read like literary philosophical works from our past. I read Bahujan and feminist scholars, even Hindu nationalists, and visited site museums. So there were many things, and I was all along writing reviews, essays, and travelogues. And this really happened over more than 15 years. In the middle of which I also moved back to India. The actual writing and editing took about 2.5 years of mostly full-time work. But the engine had been going for some time. The thought process had been active for much longer.
So before proceeding further, we just forgot to announce that anyone asking the question will be eligible for the lucky draw, and that winner will be getting a signed copy from Namit. So please get ready with your questions, and one of you will be getting a signed copy with personal message from Namit. So now we move to the next question. So this question is about the popularity of history books. So in recent times, we see books on history has become very popular, and many well-known authors are writing books on history for consumption of the masses. Earlier, it was mostly for the academics or those who are studying history, but now history has become a very, very popular genre. Whether it is William Dalrymple or we have many Indian writers also who are writing so many books. So this trend in recent years has become very prominent. So what do you think of it? Why this is happening? I think
Why this is
last 10
happening?
years, during the last 10 years, it has become very, very popular.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I think if we look at history as a narrative that explains, what happened in the past, how it happened, and why it happened. If you think of history that way, a lot of people have been writing history. In fact, we have the full range, from one end of the spectrum are the academics or the professional historians, as you mentioned. And they typically are attached to institutions who bring deep expertise in languages and archival research and have formal training in analyzing historical sources like texts, inscriptions, coins, and all that. They publish in peer-reviewed forums and frequently debate historical interpretations. And they often teach and write textbooks. Some of them have even written for general audiences, as you pointed out. Then there are popular historians who bridge the gap between academic historians and the general public. Okay, and they make history more accessible and engaging, and they often outsell academic historians. And theirs is an important role. I think history is too important to be left alone to just a few academic historians. And that's where I would fit in. I think you could call me a popular historian or a writer who also writes about history, and that's a long established space. Many popular historians have produced new insights based on their own research, analysis, and the knowledge they bring from other disciplines. Now, that said, popular history also produces a lot of garbage, okay, all the way down to the stuff we see on WhatsApp University. The bar for writing popular history is quite low. Anyone can do it, okay, and that's partly why many academic historians often look down on popular historians, and for good, legitimate reasons. A lot of popular historians have peddled nonsense. They've faked evidence, willfully misinterpreted the sources. They've ignored, inconvenient truths and produced.
And some of the big names, they have misquoted. They have taken reference from those people, which are not credible. Source itself is not credible. So they are
exactly. And and then you ask, like, why is this focus there on history in India so much, right, today? I think the focus is because, and especially like it's accompanied by calls to rewrite history, and they largely come from the Hindu right. And it's because it's a time of surging Hindu nationalism, and all nationalisms are always built on feel-good stories of the past, about but not about everyone, about the communities that are seen as members of this nation. And it comes at the expense of those excluded from the idea of the nation and who are then projected as villains to unite against. And history becomes very political in times of nationalism, and is frequently abused to forge pride among the core nationalist group. In other words, like, manufactured grievances are, then projected back onto the past, and that's what many of the popular historians in India are doing today. Now, how do we deal with this? So my take is that the readers have to step up. As readers of popular history, I think we need to be more discerning. We should demand from popular history its own kind of excellence. We should reject popular historians who compromise on facts and evidence, or who don't engage with academic scholarship and its investigative methods. Popular historians we should make sure that they display critical thinking, a humanistic imagination, and empathy with whoever they study, whatever the focus of their study. And as you pointed out, there are good examples. There's names that come to mind: John Key, there's Tony Joseph, Ram Guha, Dalrymple, Rajmohan Gandhi.
Manu Pillai.
Yes. And and so there are plenty of people to take inspiration from, and so that's where we are, I think.
Yeah. And there is debate about the Aryan migration theory. Is so very, very hot, and especially right wings claim that all the historians whether they are Indians or Europeans or Westerns, they have projecting the wrong picture about the Aryan migrations, and Aryans were natives. And even that time, people like Gopal Krishna Gokhale, they have also accepted that this migration theory is correct. There were many scientific proofs to uh, to say that it was not without any basis. But now debate has become very intense, and every second person is coming up with their theory. And they have recently, I read a history book. It is kind of propaganda. They have given a very good, solid reason to believe you that Aryans were natives, and some people say they went out for a short period, then they returned. So, your views on this issue?
Yeah, it's kind of a debate. I think this debate became hot in the last 30, 40 years, coinciding with the sharp rise of Hindutva. And what are the two sides of this debate? You pointed out some things, but let me just say it in my words. So on one side is pretty much all of the scholarly and scientific community which holds that there was an Aryan migration into India from Central Asia between 2000 and 1500 BCE after the collapse of the Harappan civilization. They believe that these Aryan migrants came in waves and had a nomadic pastoralist culture that was very distinct from the settled agriculturalist culture or the post-Harappan culture of in the subcontinent. The incoming Aryans, their culture included things like priestly fire rituals, Vedic gods, use of the horse, and early forms of Sanskrit and the Rig Veda, things that many modern Hindus consider foundational to their religion. And this is the source of like a lot of what is happening. On the other side of this debate are a whole lot of right-wing Hindus who believe in the out of India theory. And sometimes what they say is like the Europeans, they had their own agendas and they wanted to establish white supremacy, and that's why they propagated this. Now, I understand that that's one way to look at it, and I have some sympathy for that. But as it turns out, that's not an adequate basis to dismiss it. You have to look at the science, you have to look at the actual evidence. And so these people who believe in this out of India theory, they insist that the Aryans and their culture are indigenous to India, that Aryans are the same as the Harappans, who then went west and gave the gift of Sanskrit to the world, which they regard as the mother of all Indo-European languages. So that's the Aryan migration theory. There is the Aryan migration theory and there is the out of India theory. There are only two possibilities. Either the Aryans came in or the Aryans went out. Either Sanskrit came in or it went out. Practically all of the scholars today support the Aryan migration theory, and genetic science now backs them up. There is literally zero credible evidence. There are arguments, I'm aware, people have even written books, but zero credible evidence in favor of the out of India theory. It's in fact a laughably chauvinistic construct. So why does this debate go on? Despite all the scholarship and excellent books like Tony Joseph's Early Indians, which clearly lays out the science. In at least one respect, this debate reminds me of there is a debate in the US between Darwinists and creationists, and the creationists offer all kinds of arguments that seem foolproof to them and their followers and to no one else. It is something similar here. Of course, creationism there was motivated by scriptural authority. But out of India, so that's different. But the out of India theory is motivated directly by Hindu nationalism. The RSS has a long-standing commitment to the idea of indigenous Aryans. And these folks are now in all of the government institutions, including the venerable institutions like the Archaeological Survey of India, the Indian Council of Historical Research, the Ancient DNA Lab at the Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleosciences, and so on. And for these folks, the stakes are very high. The very foundational claims of Hindu nationalism require that Aryans be native to India, which basically means like, what they brought, the Sanskrit and the Proto-Vedas, Proto-Sanskrit and fire rituals, what they see as foundations of Hinduism are indigenous, primordially indigenous, because if they came from outside, Hinduism is just another, you could argue that's also just another invader religion. And so their claims of like Hindus are native to this land become weak. Anyway, so that's roughly, what motivates their arguments. And I don't know when this debate will end. I can't wait for it to be over.
Yeah. The best thing about the Tony's book is that it says nobody is pure. So everyone is a bit of Aryan, non-Aryan mix of
course,
all kind of bloods, tribal, everything
absolutely
is there. So nobody is pure actually. So if
absolutely
you go for the DNA test, so everyone has a bit of every kind of blood, you can say. Even European bloods will be there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So now comes to the foreign travelers. Many of the foreign travelers, Buddhist scholars from the China, Albania, and the Bernier from the France and Marco Polo. Many foreign travelers come to India in different point of time. So how they look at India? They must be looking at India from some set of preconceived notion they carry about India when they landed there. So their account, you have referred to their accounts also, their descriptions about India. So how much you have taken from there, and there might be the kind of filter to know whether these descriptions are real, or because many foreigners went back and told their people the cock and bull story, elephant with the 8 legs or some flying tiger, something like that. So there might be some stories which will not gel with the historical facts. So how did you do the research on those writers and travelers?
Yeah, great. So, I mean, it's really true. I mean, even when we travel, any one of us, we bring so much with us, our own cultural baggage, our personal blind spots, biases, prejudices, our moral values. We also bring different skills of observation and social analysis, and our linguistic skills vary a lot. So these early travelers were really no different. They also wrote for an audience back home, as you mentioned, and they often they had the purpose they wrote these travelogues with was different from scholarly documentation. They were not scholars. At times, they exaggerated things to boast about their exploits, and to titillate, and
to make it a Alif Laila story.
Yes, exactly. And to impart sometimes a moral lesson to folks back home. And the Chinese monks did that a lot because they were trying to bring Buddhism to China. So they exaggerated the spiritual qualities of what they saw here to make an impression back home. And many of them didn't have any role models, so they were just human. So what this does pose a problem for the history writer, obviously. And it's partly an art to decide what to trust. We need to look at other contemporary sources to assess whether an account makes sense. We should also look for internal logic and consistency and the vividness in an account to assess its trustworthiness. So take, for example, Megasthenes, who came in the Mauryan period. He is not skeptical about many things that he has written, and they tend to be those things which people have told him and he himself has not visited and seen. He talks about like people with ears so long they touch the ground, and bizarre stuff he's just noted. But he is very much more trustworthy when he's writing about Patliputra because he spent 2 years there. And his account of elephants, how they are captured and tamed and used in war, and how their wounds are healed. That's very realistic, and you can see that he has looked and he's paid attention. He was Greek, so he had no interest or no prior knowledge of elephants, and he was fascinated by these animals. It's much easier to trust someone like Al-Biruni, who was really an insightful observer, very scholarly, and he, in my view, he really deserves the title of the first Indologist. With Marco Polo in the 13th century, it's easy to discount his obvious flights of fancy, which are many. For example, he talks about like birds so big that they lift elephants and take them away.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, it's these sorts of things you can obviously discount, and his other observations are often spot on. So, for example, he says Indians reserve their left hand for unclean tasks, writing in the 13th century. And they don't use their mouths on flasks. They hold it above and pour the fluid into the mouth. Okay, so who would doubt that? And in fact, even in the 7th century, the Chinese travelers, they validated that Indians did not use they only used the right hand for eating. And then Bernier, who I also write about, the Frenchman who came in the time of Aurangzeb, is also quite trustworthy. Now, in most cases, I actually offer a short discussion on how to interpret a major traveler based on his character, his biases, what his motivations are, and so on. And finally, when in doubt, I say so plainly. And so that's how I have approached this matter.
Okay. Thank you, Namit. So now I would like to request you to read something from your book, preferably about Marco Polo.
Okay, let me just pull up my Kindle version here. And okay.
And in between, I will show this book to all my viewers and friends. So this is a very, very interesting book, worth your attention. So go and get the book and share your feedback. So it is available all over the India, Amazon, Flipkart, everywhere it is there. So, and it is a best-selling book. So please read this book. So.
Okay, thanks for that plug, Abdullah. That's great. So I'll read a small section, just the start of the chapter on Marco Polo. It's called Marco Polo's India. Returning home from China in 1292 CE, Marco Polo arrives on the Coromandel coast of India in a typical merchant ship with over 60 cabins and up to 300 crewmen. He enters the kingdom of the Tamil Pandyas near modern Thanjavur, where, according to custom, the king and his barons and everyone else all sit on the earth. He asks why they do not seat themselves more honorably. The king replies, "To sit on the earth is honorable enough, because we were made from the earth, and to the earth we must return." Marco Polo documented this episode in his famous book, The Travels, as part of his rich social portrait of coastal India. The climate is so hot that all men and women wear nothing but a loincloth, including the king, except his is studded with rubies, sapphires, emeralds, and other gems. Marco calls this the richest and most splendid province in the world. One that, together with Ceylon, produces most of the pearls and gems that are to be found in the world. Merchants and traders abound. The king takes pride in not holding himself above the law of the land, and people travel the highways safely with their valuables in the cool of the night. In this kingdom, justice is very strictly administered to those who commit homicide or theft or any other crime. The sole local grain produced here is rice, claims Marco. People use only their right hand for eating, saving the left for sundry unclean tasks. They drink fluids out of flasks, each from his own, for no one would drink out of another's flask. Nor do they set the flask to their lips, preferring to hold it above and pour the fluid into their mouths. They're addicted to chewing a leaf called tambur, sometimes mixing it with camphor and other spices and lime. They go about spitting freely, also using it to express serious offense by targeting the spittle at another's face, which can sometimes provoke violent clan fights. And the last paragraph. People worship the ox and do not eat beef, except the Gavi, a group of people with low social status who eat cattle when they die a natural death and are not admitted inside holy places. Marco also records a custom among some people in which a dead man's wife flings herself into the same fire and lets herself be burnt with her husband. The ladies who do this are highly praised by all, he says. People daub their houses with cow dung. In battle, they use lance and shield, and according to Marco, are not men of any valor or spirit, and kill no beasts or any living thing. When they have a mind to eat the flesh of a sheep or of any beast or bird, they employ a Saracen, a Muslim, so some other who is not of their religion or rule to kill it for them. Most do not consume any alcohol and do not admit as a witness or a guarantor either a wine drinker or one who sails on the sea. They say that a man who goes to sea must be a man in despair. Marco observes that people do not regard any form of sexual indulgence as a sin. I'll stop there.
Okay, great, very interesting. So we are about to end our session. So before that, some questions for our viewers and audience. Many of the aspiring authors are supposed to be part of this session. So your advice for them, fiction, non-fiction, both. What they should do, how to get published, how to write, everything, whatever you want to add.
Let's see. I mean, I think I can come up with some advice. Advice is cheap, after all. First, I would say don't worry much about things like, finding your voice or language skills. Those are important, but what's far more important in my view is to gain a diversity of life experiences, to reflect on the wide range of social arrangements people have had around the world. It's important to build a nuanced view of human nature and more broadly, how the world works. I think nurturing the mind is far more important than nurturing your writing technique. And the techniques will follow in due course if you've done the hard work on yourself. And what that also means is one should read widely across disciplines, including not just literature, but also science and philosophy, history, sociology, psychology, geology, you name it. Right?
Yes, yes. You need all of them to write a good fiction, not only
Exactly.
non-fiction.
That's true. Yes. I mean, to write anything compelling and something that will survive, beyond the initial month of your writing, you have to really take these measures. And it's not just that. What it'll also do is it'll help you build your self-confidence and make you a better critic of your own work and reduce your insecurity about your own writing. So that's like more on the artistic side of things. On the more practical side, I would say think really hard before getting into full-time writing. don't do
That
it.
is very dangerous.
Yes, that's
If
very
you're
dangerous.
not
Don't
having a
do it.
financial backup or good saving, then
Exactly.
you can't do.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't do it unless you can afford to. In literally, it means like
Yes.
financial resources. Yeah. And exactly, the ugly truth about writing is that it pays very little. It's also a lot of lonely work. It's hard on your body, and especially for your back. Sitting long hours. It's full of frustrations and self-doubt. Actual life of a writer is not at all glamorous, if you ask me. It's a life that's also full of rejections, and your published book or books will most likely not be read by many people. I mean, there are so many books out there who
Yeah, even
by
after
authors.
being published, you can be rejected.
Yeah, true. And
And that is more
yeah,
painful than not being published. So one of my
exactly, yeah.
author friend was telling that he cried whole night when his publisher called him that they are going to pulp his book. They are going to pulping for sending the book for the pulping. They will be destroyed forever. So he was crying. He
Wow.
purchased 300 copies, but it was not possible to buy all the 1500 copies that was supposed to be uh, sent
Yeah.
to the
Mm.
gallows. Like,
Wow.
so it is
Yeah,
very
yeah.
painful for the author. So now before we win, and we will keen to know that what you are working on now and what are your future plans, whether we are going to see sequel to this story, or you are going to write some as the we were discussing the other day, something about the Central Asia in the same format. So are you planning something, or are we going to get some kind of fiction? You can also write historical fiction. So
Yeah.
what are your near future plans?
Yeah, I have a couple of ideas, but no concrete plans yet. I'm currently just reading a bunch of books that were sitting on the building up in a pile while I was writing this book when I was immersed in Indians. And the truth is that I also lost my father to COVID earlier this
Yeah.
year in the second wave, which has been very unsettling, and I've not been able to really get back into writing. So perhaps a new book project will emerge in due course. I'm not being too hard on myself, but hopefully something will come, inshallah. Yeah.
And now we should take the questions from the viewers if there is any question. So this is Aditya Bharat. How do you see the contemporary historic writer and research method? Do we somewhere losing the idea of India? This is question from Aditya. Very intelligent question. We touched upon this issue. So, Namit, can you add something? So,
Yeah, we discussed this issue. I think it's not in a related way. How do you see contemporary historic writer and research methods? Well, I mean, the idea of India obviously is currently the earlier idea of India at the time of independence, in the early decades after independence, that is under severe stress. And, other ideas of India's are emerging. Uh, and I don't know about like the research methods. I mean, they are
I think the
using.
research methods are same. Those serious historians, they are doing the same thing. Process is same. There is no change. Those who are planning to carry out propaganda, they will find their ways. It was always there. They have become more
Yeah,
vocal, but they were always there. That's kind of
yeah,
book about the Taj Mahal and Qutub Minar. We read in 80s only. So Tejo Mahalya. So this
right.
kind of things were always there. And uh, as far as the idea of India is concerned, it is never going to go away because there are sizable number of good people, and we trust that. There are people like Namit and Asana and Atul also there, and Ashutosh. So they are this kind of people. And if you ask that question, I presume Aditya is also worried about that. If you are worried about that idea of India, then it will be protected by people like you. So there are enough number
I
of
hope
good
so.
people around. So I
Yes,
am
no,
very
I believe
optimistic
that.
about.
I believe that. I believe that it's not like a done deal. There is a contest,
Hmm.
but
It is
we
not
have a.
easy. It is not.
It's not easy. Yeah,
Foundations
yeah,
are very strong.
yeah.
So
I
it is
think you're
not
right
going to
there.
be destroyed very easily. So this Subhas Pathak, so he's a senior journalist with Hindustan Times. So he's asking earlier authors, particularly those trying their luck, used to tell they have wasted thousands of pages before finalizing a novel. This excuse, though genuine one, is not available with the advancement of technology. But one thing crops in the mind for those familiar with both the trends as to which mode is more convenient, creative, writing on the paper, on the cloud, through the computers or laptops. Yeah, this is
Well,
something.
I've always written on computers, and I can't imagine writing, with a pen on paper. It's just so much easier to more efficient
Editing
to
is
edit.
easier, so
Editing is
you
great,
can do the cut paste.
and looking up thesaurus and very quickly and saving a history of the documents all you can track that. So it's just like the convenience aspect is today is up to a point where as I said, I have never really considered writing on paper, and this just works for me.
So actually, I use the hybrid model. So initially, I started with a pen and paper, and that too fountain pen, not this
Oh
chalk pen.
wow. Oh
Fountain pen.
yeah, yeah,
I
I
need,
remember you telling me that.
I need fountain pen, Parker, and then proper ink. And uh, so I started like that. Now I mostly write on the computers. But when I get stuck, I'm not able to solve any creative problem, then I go back to this pen and paper, and that's all. And I create the blueprint or the outline, characters outline on paper, on a notebook, preferably handmade paper. So that helps me. Now I have got addicted to this glitter pens. So I have a lot of glitter pens, but it runs out of ink. With hardly you can write 8 to 10 pages from one glitter. So now I am using glitter pen. So every kind of blue, green, purple. So this is kind of habits. Every authors have their own habits. So I know many
Yeah,
authors still they write with in long hand and
yeah,
then type.
that's
We
true.
get
Yeah,
chance to.
yeah.
So I is there any questions or should we end? I think there is one more question.
I don't see it.
Chat. It is going. So if there is no any question, then we should end the session. And I think we have two questions, two viewers asking the question. So Namit, I think we should send 2 copies to both of them. That will be better because there are not
All
too
right.
many.
Okay, let's
You
do that.
sign Subhas and Aditya. So
Yes.
Subhas and Aditya both, you are requested to share your address. Namit will sign a copy and mail it to you. So please share your address to on this chat box. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Great.
everyone. Thank you, Kalinga Literature Festival and everyone associated with this. We really had a wonderful conversation, and thank you, Namit.
Thank you, Abdullah, and the Kalinga
And
team. It was fun.
and you write many more best-selling books. So good night. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.
See.
Bye.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, sir, on behalf of Kalinga Literary Festival. Hi, Archana Bera. Thank you all for sharing your dialogues and ideas on the book Indians, A Brief History of Civilization. I hope it will be an absolute treat for our valuable viewers. And also, I
would like to thank all our valuable viewers for sharing their comments throughout the session. Good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Archana. Take care.